How are we doing today? Today, we're going to go over my top 12 RBs. Um, we're going to talk about, why they're in the spot that I have them in, um, the workload they're going to get, concerns, pros, cons, that sort of thing. I'm just going to kind of ramble on about, each and every top 12 running back that there is for me. There could be some surprises to some. There could be, some that it makes sense. So we're gonna see what people think. And we'll get into it here in a bit. I just wanted to check and make sure that everything's okay on the other end. I don't know if because I'm very iffy on my audio and that sort of thing. So we'll go to hello. Hello. Yep, we're going on my end. Okay, so RBs today, and I do want to get to some news. Hold on, I gotta go back to Sleeper real quick. Sleeper Fantasy. Well, Sleeper Fantasy is like my favorite sleeper app, and I know there's like up and coming apps like Underdog Fantasy, and people still use Yahoo, ESPN. I don't really dig Yahoo or ESPN. I'm not sure about Underdog either because you'd have to pay to get in those leagues, and I know that they give you a bunch of free money on your account and blah blah blah. I really don't want to deal with money. I just want to play for fun, and I'm not really going to get into money leagues as of right now. I mean, maybe later when I'm older, and that would make it things more competitive. But I'm just still kind of playing for fun. Which I mean, I know a lot of guys still play fantasy to this day, ever since they were like teenagers because of the money. Really, that's kind of the motivator for it. But for me, that's not my thing. Um, so I'm gonna look at alerts right here to start off the day. Um, oh yes, okay. So Jonathan Taylor, Frank Reich said he has earned the right to be the Colts RB1. Um, this could do a lot for Marlon Mack. Uh, Marlon Mack was the RB1 before Jonathan Taylor was there, and Marlon Mack was a pretty decent RB1. Like he was a pretty good starting running back in the league. Now, was he one of the best? No, I think he was like mid tier. I think that at best, I think he was mid tier. So that's obviously pretty good. But bring in Taylor, he puts up very good production. He's being drafted as like the sixth or seventh overall average drafted position over a guy like Ezekiel Elliott, and this could actually raise the stock a little bit higher. I still, and actually, we'll just get into that later. But Jonathan Taylor, Frank Reich says he's earned the Colts job as starting running back. Um, and I was actually looking forward to drafting Marlon Mack late in drafts because a guy like him who has put up pretty good production in past years, to get a guy like him in like the 10th, 11th, 12th round is pretty good value. But of course, this kind of discourages me from doing that, and so it's getting harder and harder to find good running backs in the later rounds. So you really have to draft those running backs in the early rounds if you can. I mean, that's why I'm like, I don't know if I can draft late. The only late in the first round running back that I like is Austin Eckler. I won't draft Mixon in the first. I won't draft. Um, I mean, there's Mixon and some other guys, and so yeah, that's kind of like why you know I like drafting like one, two, three. I don't like drafting four because then you get like one of the worst of like the top 4 or 5 running backs. Um, so that's also another thing. So, but hey, let's get into these rankings. RB1, my RB1 is Dalvin Cook. And the reason why I have Dalvin Cook ahead of Christian McCaffrey, the only reason why is because Dalvin Cook is not coming off an ACL injury and his offense hasn't changed much at all. Um, so pretty much it's going to be consistent. If Dalvin Cook is healthy, which he had his one of his most healthy seasons ever, I think, in his career. So that's also encouraging. And even if he does, miss a game or two, I'm okay with that because with the production that he puts up game in and game out, I just can't ignore. And why I have him over McCaffrey is because of the ACL tear, obviously. And McCaffrey, and we'll get more to him, we'll get on more of him later. Sam Darnold is quarterback. There's a big difference between, Teddy Bridgewater, even though he didn't play much with Teddy Bridgewater. And I get that, but McCaffrey played in like 3 games last season, and he was on pace to be even better with Bridgewater. But Sam Darnold's a way different quarterback than Teddy Bridgewater. So we don't know what's going to happen there. And, Le'Veon Bell, when he was with Sam Darnold, that obviously did not work out. Now, I get that, Christian McCaffrey is not Le'Veon Bell, but you have to take that into consideration. Offensive line for the Panthers, that obviously hasn't mattered for Christian McCaffrey, so I'm not too worried about that. But Curtis Samuel's gone, so that's gonna, you know, yes, it could lead more targets for McCaffrey, but it could also ruin the uh, the free up ability, I guess, of McCaffrey, if that's a proper way of saying it. So I just like Dalvin Cook. He at any game he could just explode for like 3, 4 touchdowns and 250 total yards in a game. I mean, he is just that special. And Kirk Cousins is still the QB, and they even got better offensive line. So you could even say that he could be better because of how much the holes are going to open there in Minnesota. So I could definitely see why you could argue McCaffrey. McCaffrey was in the 3 games he did play, he was just spectacular. But Dalvin Cook isn't the one coming off ACL injury, so that's why I'm taking Dalvin Cook over Christian McCaffrey. Now, of course, RB2 Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey's he's a stud, man. I mean, he put up one of the most ridiculous fantasy seasons 2 years ago, and he was on pace to do even better last year. And that's really all you need to say as to why he's the RB2 for me. Now, obviously, the ACL injury is a concern, and running backs haven't came back well after a ACL injury. Now, Chris McCaffrey could be different, but I'm still concerned about that. And Dalvin Cook, I think, also has been through that situation. These guys can overcome injuries. These guys can overcome injuries. I'm not too worried about it. Just because the guys have been injured a lot doesn't mean they're going to, in seasons prior, doesn't mean they're going to get injured again this season. You can't just expect that people to get injured. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it don't. But because if you I can't talk. I can't speak. Now, I did just say that I take Dalvin Cook because he isn't coming off the ACL injury, but I also have Christian McCaffrey right behind Dalvin Cook. So you can't really not take someone just because you expect them to get injured, because it could come back and bite you. Now, in this case, I truly believe that Dalvin Cook is a more talented running back than Christian McCaffrey, too. And you could say whatever you want about that, but I truly believe Dalvin Cook is a more talented running back than Christian McCaffrey. So that's my point. Um, you could take whatever you want about that. I don't really care. So RB3 is Derrick Henry. I mean, over 2,000 rushing yards last year, and he could quite possibly break that again with a 17-game season. Just an absolute beast. The only thing you worry about, and this is a standard, by the way, so it really doesn't affect Henry much since it is in a standard league. Now, if it was in PPR, you'd probably take him like 5 or 6. But, he doesn't give you the receiving potential that maybe an Alvin Kamara or Saquon Barkley can give you, or even a Dalvin Cook. McCaffrey, all these other guys, he's the only guy in the top 5 that doesn't really give the receiving potential that all the other guys do. But I mean, his rushing ability is absolutely amazing, as Arias hits a 2-run homer, so that's just great. Cubs scored like 7 runs in the first inning, and they're about to choke it all away in the next 2 innings, so doesn't surprise me. So Derrick Henry rushing better than any other running back in fantasy by far, but his receiving definitely has you worried just a little bit, but I still think his receiving ability is there. I mean, it's not nearly as good as I said as the others, but it is still very, very good. So, I mean, Derrick Henry at 3, I think makes a lot of sense. So now we go to number 4, and I have Alvin Kamara at 4. This is, of course, based on standard. I play a lot of PPR, though, and I've seen Alvin Kamara drop so much these past couple of years. I don't know why people just bypass Alvin Kamara like he's nothing if you're picking in the top round. I see him fall to like 6 or 7, and I'm like, what are we doing? Sure, his production on the ground, he hasn't had a 1,000-yard season yet, but that's okay because he catches an insane amount of passes and gets a lot of receiving yards, like 600 or 700 each year. So a total of 1,500 scrimmage yards, and in PPR, he is going to be insanely good. Now, this is obviously standard. I'm going to say it a lot. Kamara, I like him over Saquon because I don't know if Saquon's ever going to be that top tier running back anymore. Like that top 3, top 2, even best running back in the league anymore. I don't know if he has that in him anymore. He kind of hit his ceiling early, I feel. I have him higher than Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, Zeke Elliott, blah, blah, blah. Kamara is going to catch an insane amount of passes. I don't care if Drew Brees is gone. If anything, Jameis Winston is going to help him, and that's no knock on Drew Brees, but I mean, Drew Brees certainly was not the thrower that he used to be. So I think Jameis Winston will give that offense a little more firepower, a little more punch to it. Punch. Like that. Boom. So that's how I feel about Kamara. I really think that Jameis Winston could make that Saints offense a lot more explosive. I'm not kidding. Drew Brees isn't you at the back end of his career. You don't think of Drew Brees as an explosive type of quarterback. So, and that's why I'll get to Michael Thomas in my wide receiver 1 through 12 stream. So Kamara's number 4 on my list. Don't know why people just bypass him. He's kind of been underrated during this draft process because people are just like, oh, we don't know if James Winston. He's a running back. Like, he's not. I don't think he's going to be affected as much as people say he is. Um, I could be completely wrong about this, but I'm super confident in what Alvin Kamara can do production wise, and yeah, and Sean Payton knows how to use him. He's not going to just forget that Alvin Kamara exists. It's just not going to happen. So my number five is going to be Jonathan Taylor. And this kind of proved, in the report that I just read earlier says it all. When he earns the RB1 role, down the stretch, he really didn't split carries with anyone. He got a legit, like, almost 90% of the carries, I feel. Is that right? I mean, Naheem Hines is still there. Marlon Mack is still there. That's a great running back room. But again, the production that Jonathan Taylor put up as a rookie was insane, and he's only going to get better. So at first I was like, wow, Jonathan Taylor up this high, that's insane, man. But he's got more potential than a lot of these running backs still. He's got more room than a lot of these running backs to grow. And if you told me he'd end up as a top 3 running back by the end of the year, I would not be surprised. It's definitely a risk, but it is a risk worth taking. He's going to get the volume. He's going to get the passes. Carson Wentz, when he had Miles Sanders, he threw to him a lot. So obviously, Jonathan Taylor and Miles Sanders completely different running backs. But I mean, Carson Wentz, what he showed last year as an Eagle, he needed a security blanket, but it wasn't there. Jonathan Taylor could be that security blanket. And when you look at their tight ends, they've got Trey Burton and Mo Alley-Cox. So I feel like, definitely Jonathan Taylor could be a guy that could just be all the way up there just in terms of production. And again, great offensive line. I know they lost Anthony Costanzo, but Jonathan Taylor is a between the tackles type guy. So it's not going to be an issue. Quentin Nelson, Braden Smith, Ryan Kelly, those guys are going to open up holes for Jonathan Taylor. My number 6 is going to be Saquon Barkley. I really had a hard time deciding between him and Nick Chubb and Zeke Elliott, and we'll get back to that later. But Saquon Barkley, he drops to all the way number 6 after an injury. I mean, injuries started to really become an issue for Saquon Barkley, and people just aren't really realizing it until the draft season has started. The mock draft season has started. I'm sorry if I'm fidgeting with my face all the time and my hair, but Saquon has certainly, he's one of the most talented running backs, if not the most talented running backs these past couple of years. But it's really hard to have confidence in him when he's almost getting injured every year. His only healthy season was his rookie year. And that's when he put up like an insane amount of rushing yards and receiving yards. He had over 2,000 scrimmage yards as a rookie. Like, that is insane. But now, after having 2 years being injured, and we aren't sure if he's going to be good enough this year. That's why he drops to 6. But the talent is still there. He can't drop that far. So, from a talent standpoint, Saquon Barkley is probably number one on everybody's list. But from a fantasy standpoint, he is number 6 on my board. And they added Kenny Galladay. They added Kadarius Toney, and rising stars over the past couple of years with Darius Slayton and maybe Sterling Shepard revival and an Evan Ingram revival. I mean, there's a lot of weapons on this team. They have to spread the wealth. We aren't sure with that old line, and of course, that didn't really affect Saquon much his rookie year. But man, and I know I said you can't pass up on a talent, and we're not really. I mean, he only drops to 6. He's not. It's not like he's dropping it all the way out of the first round. Like for any other running back, like they would drop all the way to the third, fourth round. But this is Saquon Barkley. He's not dropping out of the first round after 2 years of injuries. So, look at David Johnson, for instance. It's Saquon Barkley. So you can't deny the talent. If he stays healthy, I don't know if he's going to reach that number 1 spot, but he could definitely be top 4. So Saquon Barkley, if he stays healthy, that's awesome. Now, at number 7, we have Zeke Elliott as my number 7 running back. Some guys have him as RB8 to 10. And I just want to say, yes, Zeke can't run without a good O-line. But a lot of running backs can't do that. I understand, well, if you're an elite running back, you shouldn't need an O-line. Well, it certainly does help to have a good O-line. And, Zeke still put up productive numbers. I mean, his YPG wasn't very good. I mean, when we look at his rushing over the year, he had 979 yards, 4 yards per carry, and 6 touchdowns on an abysmal offense. And he also had over 300 yards receiving with 52 receptions. And that's without having Dak for most of the year. And he was still the RB11 and the RB9 without Dak most of the year. Dak's coming back. Dak is going to help Zeke, and that offensive line is also going to be healthier. That's why I believe in Zeke this year. I believe he can go all the way up to RB7. There's not really much else to say. You could say that he's washed. He's still only 25, guys. He's still only 25. He's got at least a year or two before he's out of his prime. So you'll start to look at that. They're going to give him the ball. I don't see why they wouldn't. Once that offensive line gets healthy, he'll get the ball more. Now, they do have that collection of receivers over there, so they're going to spread the wealth as well around. But they pay that guy a lot of money. So, hey, Zeke Elliott, I think he's going to be better than a lot of people think he will be. It's only a matter of time before he proves everyone wrong. Now, my RB8 is going to be Nick Chubb. And my phone keeps on. Yep, Brewers are just slowly coming back. Okay, so I'm just so frustrated with that. Nick Chubb, RB8. He's going to be splitting carries with Kareem Hunt, obviously, but it hasn't. Both Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb have been productive in Cleveland. Now we got Nick Chubb. Health-wise, was kind of not very good last season. He missed a really good portion of it, but man, has he been consistent, hovering around 13, 14 points per game in standard. He's the definition of consistent. He's not going to give you the big 33 points per game, that sort of thing. But he's just consistent. He's not going to give you a bad game, uh, really ever. So that's kind of my point on Nick Chubb. He's just kind of a steady guy, and the Browns are going to they're going to give him the ball a lot. They're going to give Kareem Hunt the ball a lot. It's just that type of offense, and it helps Baker Mayfield out, and Kevin Stefanski coming from an offense that gave Dalvin Cook the ball so much, it just makes sense. So the volume for Nick Chubb is still going to be good, even though he's splitting carries with Kareem Hunt, and he's just really efficient with his carries. As we can see here, we can look at the bottom here. 5.62 yards per carry. Now the receipt, and he had 1,000 yards while missing like a lot of games. So again, Nick Chubb, if he stays healthy, he's a steady guy. He'll be good for your fantasy team. Now we go to RB9, and my RB9 is none other than Austin Ekeler. Austin Ekeler, who people thought was going to take a big, big dip in the rankings, and he kind of did, but only because he was injured from weeks 5 through 11. The points per game, the fantasy points per game were still amazing. In week 2, he had 18.8. This is PPR, in case you were wondering. But 18.8 PPR, 14.8 in standard in week 2. In week 3, 20.3 in standard, 31.3 in PPR. And then really the reason why he's my RB9 is because of a PPR potential. Not really because of standard potential, but even in standard, and a first round guy is still very good. Get him in the second as well. And it's going to be that same offense. I mean, obviously, change of coordinators, but it's Austin Ekeler and nobody else there, really. They tried putting Joshua Kelly in, it didn't work. They tried putting Josh Jackson in, it didn't work. Austin Ekeler is a guy there. There's no one that can challenge him, even if they tried. So, and it's an improved offensive line there. Justin Herbert's only going to get better. I like Austin Ekeler here at RB9. Now we go to RB10. RB10 for me is Cam Akers. I mean, down the stretch last year, he was amazing. He was efficient with his carries. You would have liked to see them, pass him the ball more. But man, on the ground, he was so efficient with his carries. And once he gets more of a load, as I think he will, I don't think there's anybody challenging him, really, except Darrell Henderson. But Darrell Henderson hasn't shown to do much at all. They drafted him in the second round a couple years ago. A year ago, excuse me. So, and Matthew Stafford there makes a big difference. That O-line's going to keep improving. Everybody's just going to get better with Matt Stafford there. So, Cam Akers, huge upside. Is also a risk, but he's got huge, huge upside. I love Cam Akers at RB10. Not too much else to talk about there. RB11 for me, it's going to be Joe Mixon. Now, Joe Mixon, of course, RB11, take him at the top of round 2. I'm okay with that. I would like him to be your RB2 if you're going to take an RB in the first round, though. I don't think Joe Mixon has the shoulders, the bulky shoulders that he has to be an RB1 in fantasy. I just don't see how he on your team. I don't see how he can be an RB1. Now statistically, he's an RB1, but I feel like you need another guy that's higher up there for him just to free him up and be loose and be that Joe Mixon type of guy. Didn't really improve their offensive line much in Cincinnati. They drafted Jamar Chase, and they still got a lot of guys there. T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Auden Tate, those types of guys that are going to get a lot of the receiving work. And Joe Burrow's going to throw the ball a lot. And Joe Mixon has been a disappointment. I still believe in what he can do and what instead of what he can't do more, but I'm very weary about. I'm very worried about what bad things that could happen here. So whether he's injured or he's not getting enough carries or he's just not being efficient with his carries, and I don't know. I feel like Cincinnati here in a couple years could really be moving on from Joe Mixon. Now the final RB12 is going to be Aaron Jones. He was a number 5 running back in PPR and standard. In a passing offense like what the Packers had last year, it was insane what he was able to do. But why does he drop all the way to RB12? And it's because Aaron Rodgers isn't there. And if Aaron Rodgers isn't there and Jordan Love is throwing the football, you know how many stacked boxes Aaron Jones is going to be facing, especially with Corey Linsley now being gone and David Bakhtiari being gone for a little while. I don't think the zone run's going to work for Aaron Jones, so that's why he drops to RB12. But we're not going to forget the talent that he has. Okay, and I've made this statement plenty of times before. I'm going to say it again. Don't forget the talent of Aaron Jones. In standard in PPR, 41.6, 45.6 in Detroit, week 2. Absolutely insane. He has those games where he has his very low lows, but then he has his insanely high highs. He's not very consistent running back, but there are some games, every once in a while where he blows up for like 40, 50 points, where he scores like 3-4 touchdowns in a game. And it's kind of like Dalvin Cook, but of course, Dalvin Cook is way more consistent, in my opinion. So Aaron Jones is going to be a starting running back there. You know that. Packers re-signed him to a pretty good deal. I would watch out for A.J. Dillon, though. Try to get him in your dynasty lineups. That sort of thing. So those are my top 12 running backs. Hope you guys enjoyed that. We will talk more about, wide receivers and kind of the same way as we did today. And some of the guys who you might be surprised as to why I like them over some others. And I think wide receivers are going to be more debatable. Again, wide receiver 1 through 12, they are all very similar in points per game in terms of fantasy. So it's not really that much of a difference between them. So I don't think it's going to be that controversial. Or at least it shouldn't. We all shouldn't be so mad, But that's all I got looked at here. Let me know what you guys think. Dalvin Cook or Christian McCaffrey could bite me, but I guess we'll see. Hope you guys enjoyed looking at my camera. I mean, not my camera, my laptop here. Because you're looking at me, my webcam. That's kind of, set up on my TV there. I want to be doing a lot more stuff in terms of, gaming, Trying to get a PS4 here in a while. I'm trying to get a PS4 here and maybe play some Madden franchise mode and 2K. I do have 2K on my Switch, but I don't know how that will perform um, on stream. I could do some rebuilds, stuff like that. Talk about more about fantasy. Um, I'm not a very big fantasy basketball fan, and I've only played like one season of fantasy baseball. Um, I'd like to get back into fantasy baseball though, and I've been into baseball a lot, as you can see by me checking my phone. The Cubs, letting the Brewers come back from a 7-point deficit in the first inning. You saw I was getting pretty mad about that, but I'm starting to get to know a lot of the players here. Um, and there's a source here that says Adam Gase has accepted a job at Lincoln High School to become the team's offense coordinator. Lincoln High School is located in Ypsilanti. So Adam Gase. Oh, this is fake. So it turns out that Adam Gase was going to be apparently a offense coordinator at his old high school, and then like ended up being a bad source. So never mind. Okay. See you guys later, I guess. That was just a quick stream I wanted to make. I just felt like I should get back on here, try to be more consistent with my streams and that sort of thing. So I guess I'll see you guys later.